Have you ever felt like your faith used to be stronger? Like back when you were younger, everything felt more certain, more alive? Maybe you had more energy to pray, more motivation to read scripture, more hope about the future. But now, with the passage of time, things feel different. The body tires more easily, the days go by more quietly, and sometimes it feels like your faith is just trying to keep up. If that sounds familiar, I want to tell you something that might surprise you. Faith is not something that fades as we age. In fact, when we let it, faith can grow even stronger. It becomes deeper, steadier, more rooted. It is no longer the firework of youth, but the candle that still burns after the storm. In the Bible, we find many examples of people who walked with God well into old age. And not just walked, they taught, they led, they served, they waited. And their faith, instead of weakening, became more powerful. These stories are not just old tales. They are reminders that no matter how many candles are on the cake, God is still at work. Let's talk about this. Not as a lesson or a lecture, but like a conversation between us. Like we are sitting on a quiet porch or sharing coffee at a familiar table. You and I just talking about life and faith and what it means to grow older without growing colder inside. One of the stories that always moves me is Abraham's. Imagine the scene. A man who is already settled, already aged, already experienced. And suddenly, God calls him to leave everything behind. His home, his roots, his familiarity. At 75 years old, that's not an age when people usually begin adventures, is it? Most are slowing down, not starting over. But God saw something in Abraham that age couldn't erase. He saw a heart still open to believe, to trust, to obey. That's why he chose him. And Abraham didn't have a map. He just had a promise. One step after another, he followed God into the unknown. Not because he knew all the answers, but because he knew the one who did. That's the first thing I want to share today. Faith doesn't retire. Just because your legs walk slower doesn't mean your spirit has to. Abraham teaches us that some of the most powerful journeys with God begin later in life. Sometimes the richest part of your story comes when everyone else thinks the book is already written. And it wasn't always easy for Abraham. He doubted. He questioned. He even tried to help God fulfill the promise by his own means. But God didn't walk away from him. He stayed. He taught. He transformed. Abraham's faith didn't start perfect, but it became strong through the years, through the waiting, through the letting go. Have you ever felt like your season has passed? Like maybe you missed your moment? You haven't. With God, there's no expiration date on purpose. If you are breathing, He is still working. He is still writing. And your faith right now can still move mountains, even if all it moves today is your own heart toward Him. There's another story I love, and it's about someone who gets even less attention than Abraham. Her name is Anna. She appears only briefly in the Gospel of Luke, but her life speaks volumes. She was a widow, already very old, and she had spent most of her life in the temple, worshiping, fasting, praying, day and night. Can you imagine that kind of quiet devotion? Most people probably walked past her without noticing. To the world, she may have looked like just another old woman, but to God, she was a pillar, a witness, a warrior in the spirit. And when Jesus was brought to the temple as a baby, it was Anna who recognized him. It was Anna who gave thanks and spoke of redemption. After all those years of waiting, she saw the promise with her own eyes. That kind of faith, patient, quiet, unwavering, is a miracle. It grows not in the spotlight, but in the silence. It grows when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when no one is even asking. But God sees. He always sees. Maybe you're in a quiet season. Maybe you're not as active in your community or church as you once were. Maybe you feel like your voice isn't as strong or your energy is high, but do not for a second believe that your faith doesn't matter. It matters deeply. The prayers you whisper in the early morning, the tears you shed when no one is around, the scriptures you meditate on in stillness. These things are not invisible to God. They are treasures in His hands. Sometimes the strongest faith is the kind that simply refuses to quit, the kind that stays, that waits, that believes even when the world is loud with distractions. Anna didn't need recognition. She had something better, connection with God, and that gave her eyes to see what others missed. So maybe today you don't feel seen. Maybe you wonder if your faith still counts. Let me tell you, it does. You are seen. You are valued. And your quiet faith might be the very thing keeping a light shining in someone else's darkness. And if this message touches your heart, I would love for you to stay with me until the end of this video. And if you are enjoying this conversation so far, please consider clicking like and subscribing to this channel. It helps us reach more people who, just like you, are looking for words of peace, purpose, and encouragement as they walk with God in this special season of life. We still have more to talk about. I want to share more stories with you, stories that remind us all that our faith, even now, can grow deeper, stronger, and more beautiful than ever before. Let's keep going together. There is something special about the way time shapes our faith. In our youth, belief can feel like a sprint, all motion and excitement. But as the years pass, faith becomes something different. Not less alive, just more rooted. Less about rushing forward and more about standing firm. And that is not weakness. That is wisdom. I think about Moses and how God called him in a moment no one expected. He was not a young man when he stood barefoot before the burning bush. He was not strong in confidence or clear in speech. He was 80 years old. He had lived in Pharaoh's palace and wandered the desert as a shepherd. He had seen power and failure, privilege and exile. And it was then, in that wilderness season of quiet routine, that God spoke his name. Imagine being 80 and thinking the biggest part of your life was over. Then suddenly, God says, I have something for you to do, not something small either. Something that would change the history of his people. Something that would require courage, leadership, and deep trust. Moses hesitated. He said he was not the right person. He told God he was slow of speech. He asked for someone else to go instead. But God did not let him go. He reminded Moses that he would be with him, that he would give him the words, that he would supply the strength. What I love about Moses is not that he was fearless. It is that he was faithful, even when he felt afraid. He went to Pharaoh with trembling hands. He lifted his staff, not knowing if the sea would part. He led a people through the wilderness without a clear plan, but with constant prayer. And his faith grew not because he was perfect, but because he stayed close to God. Maybe you are in a place right now where you feel too old to begin something new. Maybe you think your time of impact has passed. But what if God still has something for you? Something that your years have prepared you for. Something that your story has been shaping all along. Moses reminds us that our past does not disqualify us. That weakness is not a barrier for God. If anything, it becomes the very space where he shows up the most. If he could use a wandering shepherd in his 80s to lead a nation, he can certainly use your voice, your story, your prayers, your wisdom right now. And sometimes, faith is not about stepping into something grand. Sometimes, it is about continuing to love someone who is hard to love. It is about praying when you are tired. It is about speaking truth in a gentle way when you could stay silent. It is about being steady when others are shaken. This is the kind of strength that comes with age. The kind that is not loud, but lasting. Another person who comes to mind is Naomi. Her story begins in sorrow. She lost her husband. She lost her sons. She lost her home. She returned to Bethlehem with nothing but bitterness in her heart. She even told people to call her Mara, which means bitter, because she felt empty and forgotten. But God had not forgotten her, and He did not let her story end in pain. Through the quiet loyalty of her daughter-in-law Ruth, through unexpected kindness and the slow rebuilding of hope, Naomi began to see life again. She held her grandson in her arms, and her heart began to sing. Naomi teaches us that faith can grow even through grief, that God can take what feels broken and bring something beautiful from it, that even when we do not understand why something happened, we can still trust that He is near. Grief is not a sign of weak faith. It is a part of love. It is the weight of what we have cherished. But we do not walk through it alone. God walks with us, sits beside us, weeps with us, and gently shows us that our story is not finished. Maybe you have known loss. Maybe you are carrying the ache of someone who is no longer here. Let Naomi's story speak softly to your heart. Restoration does not mean forgetting. It means discovering that even after loss, love can return in a new form. It means allowing hope to visit again, even in the quietest ways. There is something beautiful about the way older hearts hold space for grief and hope at the same time. You can cry for what was and still smile for what is. You can miss someone deeply and still choose to embrace the life in front of you. This too is faith, and it is strong. And just when we think we have nothing more to give, God surprises us. He gives us the chance to be a blessing in someone else's life. Naomi became a guide, a grandmother, a living example of how love can rise again. And in doing so, she reminds us that our lives still carry purpose, even after deep loss. So if today you are wondering what your role is, what your purpose is now that life looks different, remember this. Being present for someone else, offering a word of kindness, holding space for someone younger to grow, these are sacred acts. They may not seem like much, but they shape lives, and they reflect the faith of someone who has walked through valleys and still believes in the light. Let's keep this conversation going, because there is one more story I want to share with you. One more reminder that even as the years pass, faith can flourish. And who knows, maybe your greatest spiritual season is still unfolding right now. There is something deeply moving about watching someone grow old in faith and not grow weary of it. To see a person who has walked through so many seasons still lifting their eyes to heaven with trust. That kind of faith is not loud. It does not need to shout. It simply stands. And that kind of strength speaks more loudly than words ever could. There is one more elder from the Bible I want to talk about with you. His name is Paul. He is most remembered for his missionary journeys, his letters, his boldness. But what strikes me most is not just his courage. It is the way his faith matured over time. When Paul was younger in ministry, he was full of fire. He spoke with sharpness. He was determined to confront and correct. But as the years passed, something softened in him. His words became more tender, his letters more filled with love. And in his final days, when he wrote from a prison cell awaiting death, he was not filled with fear or regret. He was filled with peace. In 2 Timothy 4, verse 7, he writes, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." He did not say he had done everything perfectly. He said he had stayed faithful. Through hardship, betrayal, loneliness, and loss, he kept going. That is the kind of faith that endures. That is the kind of faith we are invited to grow into. Paul's last letters are filled with encouragement. He tells Timothy to stay strong. He asks for a cloak to keep warm and some books to keep his mind alive. Even in a cold cell, his heart is burning. He never stopped caring. He never stopped hoping. He never stopped believing. And that, perhaps, is what faith in older age is really about. Not being loud, not being seen, but being faithful. through each quiet morning, through each changing body, through each uncertain tomorrow. You do not need a stage to have a strong faith. You do not need to lead a crowd or speak with eloquence. Sometimes the most powerful testimony is simply your presence, the way you continue to believe, the way you continue to love, the way you continue to hope, even when it would be easier to give up. Paul's final message to the church was not about how much he had done. It was about how deeply he had held on. And maybe today, that is all you are being asked to do. Hold on. Keep believing. Stay the course. Your life is a story that is still being written. Every time you choose prayer over worry, kindness over bitterness, patience over complaint, you are adding another chapter to a legacy of faith that may bless generations after you. And if no one has told you this in a while, let me say it now. Your faith matters. Your story matters. Your walk with God right now, in this season of life, is just as meaningful as ever. Maybe even more. So here we are, at the end of our conversation, but hopefully not the end of what God is doing in your heart. I hope something in these words has reminded you of what is still possible. That faith does not fade with age. It deepens. It strengthens. It becomes a light for those coming behind us. If you are still here with me, thank you. Thank you for listening, for reflecting, and for sharing this moment. And if this message touched your heart in any way, I invite you to leave a comment below. Tell me which story spoke to you most, or maybe share a piece of your own faith journey. Your words could bless someone else who is watching. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, I gently invite you to do so now. It helps us reach others who, just like you, are walking through this sacred season of life and looking for encouragement. Your like, your subscription, your presence, it means more than you know. Before we part, let me leave you with this. You are not too old to grow. You are not too tired to believe. You are not forgotten. In fact, you are in one of the richest seasons of your walk with God, and the seeds of faith you are planting today will bloom in ways you may not even see, but heaven will. Take heart. Keep going. The race is not over. The light within you is still shining. God bless you, and until next time, may your faith continue to grow, steady, strong, and full of grace.